So when we talk about the research process, what does that actually look like? All right, we've seen plenty of publications out there. There's always papers. And I think the important thing to start with is an important statement that academics are big, fat liars, right? We give you research papers, but they look nothing like the research process because no one sits down to write an intro and then does the lit review, then actually thinks their methodology up, does it, comes back with their results, and then writes their conclusion. It's just not how it works. Instead, I offer you 4 stages of research that I think you might find useful as a frame when you're actually undergoing these things. And you'll see these, and that's, again, how we frame these as we go forward here. The first one, very much the concept, then there's the resourcing, the analysis, and then the write-up. Okay, so what happens in each of these stages, how you move to the next one, right, varies substantially, right? It's not always get done, document. You can, but that's less useful than you might hope. Okay, so the first one, and the concept and the team, right, is what way are you going to improve our understanding of disease transmission? What way are you going to improve our understanding of whatever it is? How are you applying GIS, right? The disease transmission one is left, right, as an example here, right? Is it connected to agent-based modeling? We're going to do these things. Or are we doing something completely different, right? Are we going to be like, well, I'm going to talk to you about how we improve our understanding of crime or our understanding of how asthma or how weather patterns, right? Whatever it happens to be, okay? The other thing is who are you working with and what skills they possess? And that sounds like silly, like what do you mean with skills? But who can do what? And if you don't understand who has what skills, you're going to have a rough go. Okay, so when you talk about a concept, right, it's really important to think of this as a funnel, right? Everything starts with a specific large-scale problem, right? Large scale, in frame. Okay, so for instance, one of my favorite set of authors in this is Billy Lee Turner, who is shorthands to BLT, and Dr. Turner has written a lot of papers. And all of them are, strangely, they're all about global warming. Global warming is so big. Okay? And then you read his papers a little more and you read further and you're like, wow, they're really actually about land change in the Yucatan. And if I said, hey, I think land change in the Yucatan is related to global warming, you're probably like, okay, Dr. Lewis, I can believe it. Okay? And then you get a little farther in there and he's counting chickens and pigs. And if I said, all right, well, the number of chickens and pigs is probably related to land change in the Yucatan, you probably go along with that as well. Right, and so all of these things to come together, and even though he's doing this element where he's down in chickens and pigs, he's global warming. Okay, so the other thing is sometimes this varies on your study area and scale, right? Where are you doing this? It's important to note that state level analysis of just the 50 states really is insufficient for just about all modern scholarship. But your concept, right? Where roughly are you doing? What are you trying to do, right? What's your big idea? What's your rough small idea? Where are you doing? These are the important areas of a good concept. The other important thing to note is to have a good team. And I understand that when you talk about teams, right, you often start like this image here on the left where there are rainbows, everybody's friends, and they're playing in the meadow. And by the end, right, you have this, one guy stabbed in the leg with a knife. He's choking at his friend. You can see one individual is unfortunately bleeding off at the side there, and this other individual is chasing his friend with the board with a nail in it, right? The end of these projects can be difficult. And so having a plan of how to work together, who has what skills, and how things are responsible is also an important part of your project plan, as you will see. And what makes a good collaboration? And let me tell you, our good friend Ashley here has some thoughts. Right, when I die, I want the people I did group projects with to lower me to the ground so they can let me down one last time. Right, this is an unfortunate and far too frequent occurrence in group work, especially for something that, when you are out in a workplace, is the default. Right, and I understand that in schoolwork, everybody's like, "Oh, group work, that's the worst." And you'll see how it develops. All right, so what have I learned? These things don't matter. Gender doesn't matter. Gender mixes don't matter. GPA, when or where you work. If you knew each other before the project started, not at all. And again, applies to schoolwork, applies to my academic collaborations, all of these things, right? What matters? Communication, the mix of skills, technical and intellectual, communication. Okay, so getting out of this stage, right? What way are you going to improve our understanding? Who are you working with? What skills they possess? So leaving the stage, you need to have your rough research questions and scale. You need to probably have an identified leader or point person on a lot of things and a communication method. whatever those happen to be. So that's step one. Step two is resourcing, right? You need all of the things, right? What things do you need conceptually and pragmatically? So really we start with data, right? It's an often looked at an important portion of any analysis. We don't want data to define our problem, but it can limit the problems that we are able to actually examine, right? So what do we need, right? What are you going to need at the end, right? What data, either raw or processed, what tables, what literature, what graphs, what maps, what documents, presentation. What are you going to need before you go do analysis? Get those things here, right? This is the resourcing step. Go find your stuff. You're going to have to live the data. Thanks to Esri for the great Halloween one. I recommend this for your Halloween costume this year and look forward to seeing your copy of it. Okay, so when we're looking at data, but we know that we're trying to get some good research questions. Remember, good research questions are not answerable with facts. There's not a yes or no, right? Can we do this? That's not a good research question. All right, we want some analysis, some data analysis, some critical analysis and thought, the results, some previous literature, right? We need to, why are these results important? Okay, these are often much less exciting than you really want, right? There's none of this, how do I save the whales? No. Okay, that's not going to work. You generally know them when you see them. They're doable, they're interesting, and they're relevant. If you have all of these things, we can make it work. As you learn to undertake more spatial methods, you will be able to ask questions in a far more pointed way, right? Certain methods are answerable by certain questions, and so you learn to ask the questions that lead into using those methods. And you learn that sometimes the question you want to ask isn't answerable by the methods that you have, so then you have to go find a method appropriate for it. Lit review is an important thing to do. I understand they can be frustrating, and they're not always terribly enjoyable, right? But understanding the research history of your topic is crucial, right? Are there strengths and agreements on topic or on methodology, on the way they approach? Are there weaknesses or notable holes? Please be careful with notable holes, because it's generally not that professors are just a bunch of dummies sitting around waiting for you to come by and be like, you guys are dumb. Here's the research gap. Okay. Have you been scooped, right? It's really, you had this great idea, somebody else did it. Well, adjust accordingly. Okay. You need a collective understanding of the state of the art in your given area. Okay. So find that first wave of papers with Google Scholar, Spider from there. Remember, for George Mason, if you log into that VPN from home, you can use the Mason subscriptions and get access to full text PDFs. Be careful of relying on just abstracts. Okay, I strongly recommend a citation manager, whether this be Zotero, Mendeley, both free, both quite useful. And again, I want to very much emphasize the importance of data, right? What are the practical considerations for a good research question? Well, there's data availability in terms of the completeness and the errors and the representatives and the bias. And the data availability. Did I mention data availability? Crucial. If you cannot find data for the questions that you want to do, you cannot answer them unless you are able to generate the data yourselves. But if you don't have data, you can't move forward. Okay, so getting out of resourcing, right? What do you need? You need, right, all the concepts, right? What are we doing? What are we bringing? And pragmatically, right? So you need your full data sets in hand, ready to use them, complete and useful research questions, and enough literature to validate your research context, methodology, and topic. Until then, you're kind of stuck in this resourcing stuff. And then we get into 3, analysis, right? This is what you came for, right? Conduct the analysis and check for robustness. That is this step, right? So you're going to run your model, mine your data, make your maps, conduct your statistical analysis, blah, 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 blah. Okay? Don't rush this part. It's really easy to be like, yes, I did it, right? But if you rush it, you're just going to have to come back. So make sure that you do it right, that all the things are there. As you understand more about the methods, you'll learn more about what it means that you have an answer that actually isn't useful. Okay? So when you leave this stage, right, this stage is really easy. When you have a complete set of properly run and useful model output, even if it's clunky, right, but you need it formatted, right? If you just have raw results, take that time, pull them together, and actually make them useful. Nobody wants your raw results. Everybody wants them processed. Finally, then you come to write up, right? You explain everything in that expected format, whether it's a poster, whether it's a paper, whether it's a fantastic video, PowerPoints. I hear there's some really cool things being done in that space. Okay? And then you're going to edit some more, and then submit. Okay? So there are failure conditions, right? Sometimes the analysis doesn't work, or revisions are requested, right? What you really got to watch out for are things that knock you back in the stages. And the reason that that's a problem is that chews a lot of time, right? If you're stuck going back, somebody asks something like, oh, well, why didn't you think about incorporating this element in your analysis? Well, now you're all the way back into resourcing, because now you have to go figure out, well, does that data exist? Does data exist for this? What scale does that data exist, right? And so now you moved all the way back. So anything that requires new analysis can be frustrating. Anything that requires new data is even worse. Right? So you want to make sure that you've properly scoped things out early on so that you know you have all of that when you go to analysis. And so that if there are changes that are requested, hopefully they just involve write-up. And changes in write-up are really just words, which is fantastic. And this is why cutting corners on those earlier stages makes it far more likely that you get knocked back a little later, right? That something doesn't work and then you get stuck cycling. And that can be really frustrating for everybody. And it's not something I wish for you. Good luck undertaking this research process.